What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the shelf. And today I have the great pleasure of being joined by Mr. Dwight H. Little. Mr. Little, how are you doing today, sir?
Good morning, Mark. I'm doing pretty good. I had to take my car in this morning. You know what that's like.
Oh, it's a pain. That sucks. I had to deal with something like that this past summer. A lot of
Yeah,
money, a lot of time, big headache.
like life just keeps catching up with you. Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
good. Thank you for asking.
Aside from the car troubles.
Yeah, right.
Cool,
Exactly.
very cool. So as many of you may know, Mr. Little here is a very prolific filmmaker, very versatile. Gave us such offerings as Halloween 4, Marked for Death, Last Rampage, which I just watched most recently. I really enjoyed that film. But he's also an author, and he has a recent book out called "Still Rolling: Inside the Hollywood Dream Factory." Um, so, being that this is a horror focused YouTube channel, I do feel we have to spend the obligatory
Of
uh,
course.
Halloween 4 discussion. But then, with our remaining time, I really want to talk to Mr. Little about this book and to encourage anyone out there who's at all curious to definitely check it out because, as we're going to talk about, it's very good. So, to get the Halloween stuff out of the way, not that
No,
obviously I'm very happy to talk about it, but I feel
yeah,
like you
we
probably
can
could add.
enjoy we can enjoy Halloween for it. It's good.
Awesome. I just feel like you probably get asked about it a lot, so I tried to come up with some interesting questions that maybe you haven't heard before. But
You
so
know, a good friend of mine is Robert Patrick. You know, no matter where he goes, no matter what he does, it's like they want to talk about T2, right?
very much so. And I as someone who's like very aware of that sort of thing, I try to be I
No, no,
people
no. It's fun.
people have done other things since, the 80s, right? So like we want to talk about other things. But so something that I'm curious about regarding Halloween 4 is just how has your relationship with that film changed as time has gone on?
That's an interesting question. It had an initial rush, as you know, from about 88 through the initial maybe Blu-ray or maybe it was just DVD release. And for about 3 years, it was a very much part of my life because it did help me get to Steven Seagal. You know, Steven Seagal was a fan. It helped me with Phantom of the Opera with Robert England because Robert he really loved it. So that was a very important film for me. And then it kind of went away in my life for a while. And then I found, and I'm trying to think if this was the mid 2000s or early 2000s, AMC started something called Fear Fest. And one of the featured movies was Halloween 4, and it was every October. So they would bring out Halloween 4, and I'm thinking this starting like 15 or maybe even 20 years ago. And it was very, very popular. So, I mean, they ran other ones too. You know, they ran Jack Carpenter's and they ran sometimes two and, you know, some of the later stuff. This is before the last threesome, you know, Halloween Kills or whatever. So, a whole generation like rediscovered Halloween 4 and it blew up. I mean, I got lots of letters, lots of notes, lots of activity. And I think it had largely to do with AMC. I know a lot of people who said that when they were kids, they would like one of their favorite things was to on Halloween night like sit on the couch with the family and watch Halloween 4. And it gave me great pleasure because I think, you know, it's kind of fun in that way. So, the short answer to your question, it was reborn on AMC, and now it's really got a life of its own. People really like that movie.
That's very true, and I'm one of those people who grew up, discovering Halloween films from Fear Fest. Halloween 4, and they played H2O a lot, I think, and Resurrection and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, as far as Halloween goes, it's a very rabid fan base, as I'm sure you know.
Of course.
The horror community at large is very passionate about the things that they're into. I'm wondering, have you ever done any like horror conventions or anything? Any like
I did one in Pasadena.
okay,
I think it was I don't remember if it was specifically a Halloween convention or it was more of a like a a horror fest kind of thing, but it was great because I got to see Danielle and I got to see Ellie Cornell, and I believe even Bo Starr might have been there, and Sasha Jensen. There was a lot of, so it was fun for me. It was like old home week. And who was the girl who played the cop's wife? Kathleen Kinmont. She was there, so it was really fun. And there was a lot of signings, and people at those conventions, as I'm sure you know, they bring their own things, like DVDs, T-shirts, box sets, and they want you to sign them. It was great, but I have only done that one.
Do you have any desire to do more, or is that something that's
I
not very
would,
interesting
I
to you?
would if it's geographically convenient. I don't really want to make a big travel thing out of it. It's a lot of work, as you know, to cross the country or whatever. But if it's, San Diego, Los Angeles, anything that's Las Vegas, anything like that, I would probably be open to for sure. It's fun.
Okay, cool, very interesting. So this is a question I think you've been asked before, but I'm going to try to frame it in a little bit of a different way. Halloween 4 is pretty. It's known for introducing elements into the franchise that later sequels have sort of aped and put their own twist on. So you've got Michael escaping from a facility, hunting a family member, the mob versus Michael thing, which Halloween Kills did.
Yeah, they really just took the whole plot.
Yeah, I mean, they really did, and I think, how does it? I was wondering, how does it feel knowing that even outside of your contribution of age 4, your contributions are still sort of being felt in, even the modern day films all these decades later.
Well, I had a partner in that, Alan McElroy, who was the writer, and he and I came up with Halloween 4 together, and we really wanted to make a procedural. This sounds funny, but a procedural cop movie, and we saw Donald Pleasance as the cop, even though I mean he's a psychiatrist and the Michael's doctor. But we always thought, well, He's on the trail of a serial killer. He's on the hunt for a serial killer, and so we sort of treated it in that Silence of the Lambs kind of way. And then if there's a jump scare, or then if Michael's lurking, or then if there's tension and suspense in a horror way, that's great. But we tried to ground everything. And I'm a little disappointed in some of the later ones, like this last three, because I mean, this is sort of talking out of school, but I think they became like killing zones. Do you know what I mean? They were like, it just became a kill fest. And our movie, I thought, was much more of a procedural. Like he has to get his overalls, so he has to kill the mechanic, right? And then he has to shut down the phone lines, and then he has to shut down the power. He has to throw Bucky into the power grid in order to make the place, as he keeps getting closer and closer to Jamie, to his niece, and he has to actually take the mask from I guess you'd call it a drugstore pharmacy. He takes a commercial Michael Halloween mask. That's why people say, well, why does the mask look different? Well, because he stole it from a store. That's how he got it in our mind's eye. And so he rebuilds himself as Michael. And we did it very strategically. And then when Donald Pleasance goes to see the chief of police, instead of that old cliche, which is like, "Oh, go away, old man, you're just talking nonsense." Instead, he's like, "I better look into this." And he goes with Loomis, and they go to the house and find the dead dog and so forth. So now within that structure, then we built what we thought were some pretty good scares.
Right. All the scares I think in age 4 they're very restrained. They're almost like these blasts of violence, and then it's kind of, and then it peters out, and then you build it back up again, and then that's something that I don't think some of these later sequels, while I do enjoy aspects of them, I think they miss a bit of that part of them. Especially like you say, like with the mask, there's just some contrivances as far as how he gets the exact same mask back, and it's like, well, I think that's a bit fan servicey.
Well, we probably should have paid a little more attention to the mask because a lot of people weren't happy with it. I didn't think about it much at the time because I thought, oh, he looks like Michael. But there are some sequences, I guess, what we all call set pieces that people remember. Obviously, people talk about the rooftop sequence, but that's a thriller sequence more than it's a horror sequence. You know what I mean? It's like it's a classic Hitchcockian thriller sequence. And so is, the final truck sequence at the end is quite unbelievable. I don't mean unbelievable that it's not believable. I mean, it's just exciting because Michael's on the car. He's literally, trying to get his hand onto her throat. She has to not get him off the truck and then run him over. It's kind of what you might see in an action thriller, a French Connection movie, something like that. And yet, when he pins Kathleen Kidman up against the door with the shotgun, it's pretty horrific.
Right, you're able to sort of blend all of these things pretty seamlessly, I would say. And I'm glad you mentioned French Connection because that kind of is a beautiful segue into my next question, which is that there's this thing about guys like William Friedkin, like Stanley Kubrick, and I would even say guys like you as well, where you're able to make these really great horror films, but you're not necessarily horror guys. You've done a lot of other things as well, and you really can't be pinned down to any one genre. What do you think it is about that gives you guys that kind of quality?
Well, that's why I didn't do Halloween 5, and I kind of regret it, and so does Alan, because we feel like we could have really done something with that. I thought they were going to take what we had left them and do a little bit more with it. Nevertheless, I didn't want to become the horror guy. And then of course the very next thing I did was a Robert Englund horror movie. So um, I think it all comes back to storytelling. So whether you're telling a thriller or an action movie, I've even done family movies. It's all about storytelling, and I think Friedkin did The Exorcist, and he did it better than anybody. But then he also did a million other kinds of movies beyond horror. So yeah, some of those directors who do a great horror film are then able also to do other things. I mean, I think Coppola's Dracula is amazing, um, but you don't think of him as a horror director particularly.
No, yeah, I think that's the mark of a real student of film is just you know an unwillingness to get boxed into one genre where you're clearly very interested in lots of other things, and you wouldn't be content to just stay in one lane. So I think that's a filmmaker who is very interesting to follow their career, where you really can't guess what they're going to do next.
Okay. Well,
Um,
sometimes it's just circumstance. It depends on an opportunity or an offer that comes in, and you're able to seize it, and that takes you off in a direction.
yeah, I definitely got a great sense of that in the book, but it also felt as though it was like exactly where you needed to be in a way where it was like
I know. In
things kind of always
retrospect,
worked out.
it all makes a kind of sense.
Yeah, yeah. And then I guess our last Halloween question, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you guys had done that Halloween 5, you and Alan, do you know what that would have might maybe looked like? Would you have continued with the Jamie stuff, or would you have?
Well, the sisters, both of them. I mean, we never would have killed Rachel, Ellie Cornell.
Mhm.
Never. We would have kept the sisters together. We would have had Danielle go through some kind of, regression therapy to see if we could unpossess her in a clinical doctory way rather than a supernatural way, and try and make, because at the end of the movie she's obviously in some very dangerous place. So we would have done more to, I think, relieve her of her possession, keep her with Rachel, keep that bond, and then when Michael comes back, try to protect her from getting to her a second time. I think that's what we would still have him to have disappeared through the well into the river. I think that was okay. But I think we would have done a lot of things very differently. They really went off on a kind of a different direction. But I thought we had a core with the two, with those two girls that was It was like our Laurie them together was like our Laurie Strode, you know what I mean? The 2 of them together.
No, 100%. I like that too. It's like sort of they both kind of make up together those kind of qualities that maybe you look for in like a final girl or something.
Right, and Ellie would be older by then, so she could have a new boyfriend, and she could still be trying to, her sister's in I don't know if she'd be in a mental hospital, but she'd certainly be under a doctor's care as they try to get the Michael out of her. I think that would have been interesting.
No, very much so. Sort of almost like this internal struggle of, whether she wants to kind of succumb to that darkness or not. And, maybe Rachel helping to pull her out of that.
Well, right, 'cause it's her genes, like, it's her hereditary destiny, and can we get her away from Michael in that way?
No, I think that would have been very interesting, but it's one of those cases where it's like we'll never know what could have been, right?
My
Um,
my Halloween 5 is not gonna see the light of day.
yeah, and Halloween 5 does have its fans, every franchise, every movie in the franchise has, a rabid fan base.
Right.
So not looking to dogpile on 5 or anything. I'm very curious what it would have looked
No,
like.
I don't want dogpile on 5, except that my expectations were different, that's all.
For sure. I could totally understand that being the director. That makes a lot of sense. So something that you talk about a lot in the book is, especially in the back half, is just kind of the way that the industry has kind of changed today with a lot of streaming things and things of that nature. And I was wondering, would you rather have made a movie back then, and let's say in the 80s or so, maybe early 90s, would you have rather made a movie that went to theaters and didn't make a profit, but it was a movie that people liked or they went on to like? Or would you, maybe have rather made a movie that went right to streaming? People talk about it for a week and it's successful, but then it kind of disappears forever.
Well, yeah, that is the problem with the streaming movies. They're kind of like a newspaper. They're sort of disposable.
Yeah.
It's like, we have Jamie Foxx in a movie for Netflix, and it plays for a week, and then it's never heard from again. When you make a feature, or when you used to, even if it wasn't a hit, it would have this afterlife. I mean, Rapid Fire is a perfect example. It did not do well on its theatrical release. It was then released on VHS and DVD. A lot of people discovered it, and then over time it found its way to cable, to Stars and to some of those HBO and all. And now Rapid Fire is very well regarded and kind of lives on. And I don't want to put myself in the same category, but just as an example, there's a lot of movies like Fight Club, that were just completely dismissed at the time. And then over the years, they just rebuild into something else. So with a feature, you get a chance to have a shelf life. I mean, my movies from the 90s, they play on cable all the time still. They're all those Murdered 1600, Anacondas, they're all on cable all the time. And if they had been made as streaming movies, they'd be gone, long gone. And I don't know what that is, but it's still true even now, I think. Um, like a lot of they'll get a big star to be in a Netflix or an Amazon movie, and then they get some views, and then that's it.
Yeah, these things really don't seem to have any sort of shelf life at all, like you said. And so that to me feels as though that we just kind of have a market flooded with movies. Like we're having abundance of movies, and it's almost kind of diluted the overall effect. Uh, my next question: do you think it's easier now to make a career in film, or back when you were coming up?
Well, the difference is now with what I call the Northern Californians taking over, is everything's very corporate. And when I was coming up, there was a very much more entrepreneurial business outside of the studios. You had Sandy Howard and Sam Markoff and Roger Corman and a lot of these seat of the pants. I would guess you'd call them B movie producers or independent movie producers. The classier version of that was the Weinsteins, who built up a massive company. I mean, because of his where he landed legally, people forget how huge, the Weinsteins were. I mean, from exploitation movies and to Oscar movies, and they were just massive. And they had the power as moguls to just green light a movie, right? They could just say to Robert Rodriguez, "Yeah, I'll make your movie," or I'll to Quentin or whatever. And now at Amazon or Hulu, or it's all corporate, so there's nobody there. It's like you can't get to anybody because it's layers of offices and VPs and senior VPs, and those people report to the head of programming, who report to this. And it's even if you go in with a UTA package, like, you've got to have the movie practically made before you even approach. We have, oh gee, we have Ryan Gosling, and we have this, and we have this, and then they'll maybe think about it. So I'm more grateful than bitter that I had a chance to make movies with, like, sort of seat of their pants producers, but they're dinosaurs. They just aren't here anymore.
That reminds me of a part in the book in your television section where you talk about a casting dispute that you had where you had to you really made it a point to kind of call and push the issue. Um and then it wound up being kind of like a non-issue where, it was just one person really who had no business kind of challenging you guys.
Right,
Um
and nobody
yeah,
even thinks about it because no one calls it out. It's like, well, Fox Casting doesn't agree. Well, okay, well, who is that
right.
exactly? Right?
Right, that's not an entity, that's like some omniscient sort of right, like, what are we
It
talking
was
about?
like Skynet. Like, you can't
Yeah,
you can't talk to Skynet, but you can talk to this assistant who was 26, who made a decision that her boss didn't even know about.
right. It's an interesting sort of, catch-22 there. Um, Another question I had for you is, you're sort of like a chameleon in the way that you're very adaptable. You adapt to situations and challenges that come your way, as well as just the variety of genres you've tackled. Where do you think this quality or this ability kind of comes from?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I do think that I'm a problem solver for sure, and I do have the ability of not panicking most of the time. I have melted down, but generally, when I'm brought a terrible dilemma, I can sit down for a minute and breathe and work my way through it. I think I think emotion and temper is a very dangerous animal, and because you want to so badly, tell somebody to fuck off, or you want to just, quit and go to your car and leave the studio. And I mean, you want to indulge in all that behavior, but there's such a price to pay for it. Now, I have done it. I mean, I've taken my headphones off and wrapped it around a producer's neck and said, "Here, you fucking direct it," and walked to the parking lot. I mean, I've done that, not often and not proudly, but there are moments where it's just a bridge too far. But I think if you can stay calm and listen, you can get through almost anything, because there's a good chance whoever you're fighting with has a point of view, and it might be right. It might be right. So
Yeah, that's what those were the sections of the book that I found most interesting was when you're dealing with these guys like Steven Seagal and Wesley Snipes, and you realize that you're getting into potentially a sticky situation, and you're always cognizant of that. And I'm like fascinated in how you're able to kind of, you're able to tailor, you're not being phony or anything, but you're able to tailor how you would address these people and get them to, because at the end of the day, all that matters is that you get what you need to make your
Well,
day.
these are big personalities, obviously. They're big, they take up a lot of space in the room. And a lot of the TV actors I worked with do as well. And I haven't gotten along with everybody. I've had fallings out, and I've had situations I could not resolve, but 90% of the time I was able to get the person to make, and I mean, this is the old cliche, but it's so true, make it their idea somehow. If you can back them into a situation where it's their idea, I used to learn how to do blocking that way, where I would figure out the scene exactly. I would put this prop here and the coffee maker here, and I put the chair by the window and the lamp here. And I would go in, I'd look how they dressed the set, and then I would completely redress the set before the day started. So when the actor comes in, it's like, well, the first thing I would do is I'd go to the coffee maker, and then I'd probably sit in this chair and do this. And then so they're discovering all this, right? And it's very organic, and they're making it real, and they're just owning it, and it's all their decision. But what they don't know is the reason the chair is by the window is because I need the light from the window to give them a side light, and it's all planned. But if they had come in, I'd say, look, I need you to come in the door, go to the closet, then I want you to sit in the chair here, and then I want you to go back to the closet. Oh, if you start telling them what to do, then they get their back gets up, right? Because they feel like their art is being taken away from them. So you got to manipulate a little bit.
It's a very under it's a skill that you can't really be taught, right? It seems like something that you kind of have to, sort of innately figure out how to do. And those, yeah, like I said, those are some of my favorite parts of the book. In particular, I really enjoyed where you talk about this train issue that you had, where the train couldn't leave the station, and so being such a student of film, you were able to kind of pull out this old trick where you're able to kind of use an illusion to kind of make it look like the train was moving. So,
Right.
to that point, I just want to ask you, how much do you think being a real student of film, a real cinephile, how important do you think that is in order to really be a successful director? It sounds probably a little obvious, but
Well, it's
just
obvious, but it's true. I think it's 100%. I the where I had little trouble was I did not grow up watching much television. I saw some, of course, when I was a kid, like Mission Impossible or some of those shows, but I didn't really watch much television. I was a connoisseur of movies, though. I really did know my movies. I knew my 70s directors and so forth. When I got into television, I found that people were doing a lot of referencing of television, and my vocabulary was not that good. I had to do some catching up. But what I did instead is I brought my film sensibility to television rather than trying to adapt and make a TV show. I never was interested in television, like at all, although I liked Mannix when I was a kid. It
nice.
just didn't interest me. I just thought it was disposable. I just still do, by the way. I mean, there's some good shows. I thought Prison Break was a really, really good show. But a lot of the stuff that's made even on the streamers now, let alone the networks. I mean, you can't tell one episode of Chicago fill in the blank from another, right? You don't. It's the same. It's just, and I've done them, so I can say this, but it's such a formula, and it's the minute that last credit comes on that it's forgotten. However, I did some episodes of The Practice because the writing was so, I mean, it was David E. Kelley, so you're dealing with writing that's another level. That's a long-winded answer, but to say, yes, it's really important to know your history and who's come before you. For me, it was film. Some people are legitimate students of television. They really do know, from Norman Lear to Stephen J. Cannell to some of those, auteurs, Dick Wolf. They really know their John Wells. They know their work, but I didn't really know much about television. Isn't that weird? Just
Yeah, I like the way that the book kind of seamlessly flows and it follows your journey from movies into television and then back into movies and kind of applying everything that you've learned to the next thing. Again, speaking to that adaptability that I really think that you have. You mentioned the state of TV now, and I do think it's kind of crazy. Just one, the turnaround time between seasons has become like 2 years because of
Yeah,
all the sort of
you forget about the
you
show.
forget you have to rewatch it, which is insane, to kind of catch yourself up. So it's almost like you're better off waiting for the show to end and then just kind of watching it all because shows are taking a decade to produce 60 episodes. It's crazy.
Well, let me just bitch for 1 second. What if you take a new show like this Alien Earth or whatever it is, okay? So yes, it's well produced. I know the showrunner is smart guy. Well produced, clever people making it. They have plenty of money. But why? There's five of them, right? I can see Ridley Scott do it. I can see Fede Alvarez do it. I mean, like, why? Why would you reboot that just to have an IP? Like, this frustrates me because why spend all that talent and all that money? I could go see one of the later Blade Runners, and just why not do that? I don't know. It makes it. It's like why would you reboot that?
I've heard the show is cool. I haven't personally checked it out. I don't watch nearly as much TV anymore because of these problems with the turnaround time is insane. Um, there's this binge model that I don't necessarily like where maybe I do watch a show, but then I kind of blow right through it because that's sort of my nature. I like to
Right.
get it all done and then move on to the next thing.
Right.
But then it doesn't have the same lasting impact.
Well, there's been some streaming, TV shows that I've enjoyed for sure, but I mean, you go to Van Nuys or Canoga Park or something, and you would get, 150, 200 recruited people, to watch your rough cut with temp music. And now you're facing the beast, right? Because these people are harsh and they will praise it if they like it, but mostly they'll rip you a new one. So if you see where the laughs are, where the boring parts are, where where people get up and go to the bathroom, where they get restless, you can really feel your movie. And then you go back to the cutting room and you retool it, knowing that you were sure that scene was going to play, but it just didn't, right? And there's no way to know that it wasn't going to play until you put it up in front of 150 people, because now they're in charge, and they should be, because you have to make a movie for an audience. It's not for you; it's for an audience. So all that is lost in a streaming. They don't have time to focus group and test and recut and reshoot and do a new, and like Fatal Attraction, famously, they reshot the whole ending. Officer and a Gentleman didn't work at all until they reshot the ending. There's literally 100 examples of films where they tested them, they failed, they reshot them, recut them, and then they succeeded. So that's all lost now. I mean, there's no time, there's no resources to, let's release it in next quarter. They just have to get, excuse me for my throat, they have to get them out. So I think that was good for filmmakers to have to face your audience.
Yeah, it seems to me that that sort of feedback is could be very invaluable. Maybe it'll be instances where it's not necessarily good feedback, and you might actually get kind of screwed by a test screening where maybe you just had the wrong audience, and then you wind up having to change to appeal to something that wasn't actually a problem. Have you ever found that to be the case where the opposite is true, but maybe not
Well,
as often?
you don't look at what they wrote in the cards. I don't look at their comments, but I sit with them, and you absolutely can tell. Like if Brandon beats Al Leone at the end of Rapid Fire, and 50 of the 150 people burst out into applause, that moment's working, right? It's not a mystery. This, like, God, that you nailed that. Or if there's a love scene and they're just getting started and people are literally snickering or giggling or getting up and they're uncomfortable and they go to the bathroom, you don't have to read their written notes, right? You just know they're telling you what's working. So like anything, you have to read what you read the information you're getting, but it's not the written critique. It's you can feel it. I didn't realize that Murdered 1600 was going to play. I thought it was a disaster until we took it to the Third Street Mall, and which is here in Santa Monica. It's a public thing, and we had a pretty big screening for the Warner Brothers people. Well, again, it was an unfinished print, and we made changes, but people laughed in a good way, where I didn't think we had the joke. They found Wesley and Lane great together. The movie really played much better than we thought it was going to. So sometimes it's good news. Sometimes you just want to stick your head in the sand because you know the movie is not going to work.
I think that's very interesting because it also speaks to the importance of the communal aspect of a movie theater and getting to have that shared experience. Because I really do think it's true that there are movies that, had I watched the movie by myself at home versus having that organic experience with, a crowd who's just as invested as me. Like, for example, I saw Long Legs in the theater, and that was, I found it to be a very effective, cool horror, thriller.
Very,
And
very
and
cool.
with horror films, you can have often you'll run into very disrespectful audiences who are talking throughout it, or they're on their phones. But with that movie, I think maybe I just got very lucky, but it was a really packed theater and everyone was silent and you could feel the tension. And you don't get that at home.
With him, with long legs, and you can't quite see him, and the way they shot that, and it's the little girl's POV. One of the scariest things I ever saw. And I do have a beef, which is I didn't quite get the mother part, the reveal. I mean, it didn't land for me. But there's so much that worked. And I think she did a great job, the FBI lady. It was kind of a Jodie Foster pull, right? Like a Clarice, what's her name?
Starling.
Yeah, but still, the movie had a consistent tone and mood, and they got it and they stuck with it, and it was pretty scary.
For sure, and it's really cool because had they not achieved that, it's possible they might have lost the audience and they might have gotten bored and started talking amongst themselves. And I think it's equal parts, well well crafted filmmaking and then having that shared experience where I think maybe people don't know that they value it so much, but when you're in that environment, you're like, you can't help but recognize like, oh, this is actually a powerful experience.
Yeah, and when you watch it at home, if you watch Long Legs at home, I mean, you might be tempted to pause it after 20 minutes and go get something to eat or take a leak or something and answer the phone or check your socials and then come back. And I find myself doing it now, and I'm the biggest critic. I find myself watching television because I usually sit down at around 9:30 or 10 to see what's there, and I will be glancing at my phone while it's on. So now I've got two screens. My kids have three screens, right? So it's very different.
For sure, and that makes me feel a little better because I knowing that you do it too, I don't feel as bad about my
It's a terrible habit, but I can't help it.
I can't either.
I get a little bored, or I know where this is going. Like I move it along because I know where you're going, and and I
100%.
just and I just check. Oh, I got an email from so and so.
Yeah, yeah. Let me respond to this right now.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's to the point now where if it's a film I really want to give my full attention, I'll even leave my phone in the other room because I can't trust myself.
Well, that's the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, but it's bad that it's gotten to that point, isn't it? I don't
Well,
know.
but some of these movies don't deserve us not to be distracted.
That
They're not.
brings us back to the streaming thing. Yeah, they're
They're not
disposable.
good enough.
Yeah,
Did
that's
you see
true.
that one with who's the actress from Mask? She was a big star. She
Oh,
was with
from Mask. Is that the one with Cher? Uh, or
Mask, the Jim Carrey comedy.
Oh, that Mask, Cameron Diaz. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I thought you meant Mask with
yeah, no, no,
yep,
that's a good book. So Cameron Diaz, huge star in her day, right?
for sure.
And they put her with I'm picking on this movie. They put her with Jamie Foxx in this kind of thriller, and it was a direct to Netflix one. I'll pick on another one too. They had Idris Elba and John Cena in a movie, big expensive movie,
Yeah, I know the one.
and it's as it's as bad as it gets. Right? It's just lazy, sloppy, uninteresting, derivative. How if one of the filmmakers is watching now, I'm sorry.
I doubt it, but hey, look,
But
it's
it
important
just
feedback.
the reason I'm so frustrated is because these are all talented people. Idris Elba is one of the most talented actors we have, right? And you're gonna use him up in this formula nonsense. And then, by the way, no one even remembers they made that movie. You probably don't even know they made that movie. And it's like that was probably 50, 60 million dollars.
At
So that
least.
yeah, maybe more. And so it but it's not just Warner's and well, Fox's, Disney now. It's there's a few well, Paramount now is really Larry Ellison. Let's go through them. I mean, Paramount is Larry Ellison, that's Oracle. I mean, David is the son is leading the charge, but it's really Larry Ellison's money. And they're talking now about making a move on Warner's. So that'll be one Northern California bucket. And then you've got, these other, Amazon is what is it, Jeff Bezos, and he bought MGM for the library. So there's, Netflix is a Palo Alto company. This is not Mayer and Thalberg and Zanuck, and this is not the old entrepreneurs of Hollywood. This is a totally different. This is make money, push subscriptions, drive the algorithm. This is a very different world, and then of course AI will complicate it even further. But so it is different.
It's sort of dystopian, isn't it? I mean, I
It
try not
is.
to get too, you know, it's something that we need to be aware of and criticize it, but it's kind of depressing, honestly, the state of things now.
Well, it is a little, and I think there are good things that come through. There's a movie coming out this weekend, which everybody has high hopes for, which is One Battle After Another. I haven't seen it yet, but that is a unicorn. I mean, because it's Paul Thomas Anderson, he can attract those stars because they want to work with him. But his track record, his filmography, is because he was making movies 20 years ago. I mean, how long ago was Boogie Nights? How long ago was um, what was the other great? Oh, There Will Be Blood. I mean, these are 20-year-old movies. People revere him because of the movies he made then. Didn't he do Magnolia? I mean, these are great movies.
Hmm.
But is there still an audience for Paul Thomas Anderson? We'll see this weekend.
I hope so. I think Warner has had a really great year just financially. I think they've had like something like 7 consecutive movies to all really make like a lot. I don't know the exact figures, but they're doing, good. And it's important to remember also that they've also had a lot of bad years prior to this. So
Right, right.
it's not necessarily like them turning a new leaf or whatever, but yeah, it's interesting. I don't know.
They had a surprise hit with the Josh Brolin movie.
Oh, weapons.
Weapons was really no one saw that coming, and good for them because they struck a nerve. And they were certainly, I mean, I think Josh Brolin was their secret sauce because it made it kind of a studio movie, whereas it could have been just seen as a kind of a long legsy indie. But by putting a star in it, it really changed the perception. So a mainstream, you know, someone who lives in a St. Louis suburb would go see it.
Right. It's interesting with with the older demographic how just having a Josh Brolin or maybe 10 years ago or 15 a Tommy Lee Jones or something, you're able to attract that older demographic where maybe otherwise they wouldn't have even bothered.
Well, it gives you comfort. It's like, okay, so, I know Tommy Lee Jones and he's usually picking good material. So, but of course, the other problem is that the streamers haven't really created their own stars. They're still living off the fumes of movie stars. So it's still Ryan Gosling, right? And it's still Chris Evans, and they're still pulling. They're not. I mean, there was one called Outer Banks, and everybody thought, oh, we're going to create a bunch of new stars. I guess Stranger Things, some of those kids have gone on. But it's unusual. They haven't, it hasn't really created big. I mean, if you're still getting Nick Cage and if you're still getting John Malkovich, and it's like these are old movie people, right?
Yeah, it's almost, this isn't an original thought. I've heard other people say this, but it's almost more like the franchises themselves are the stars. Where people show up to see Iron Man, they don't necessarily care about Robert Downey Jr. necessarily, and I think that's a little upsetting because you come from the era of the Stallones and the Gibson and
Right.
Costner and all them where it didn't matter what the movie was about, whether it was arm wrestling or
No, no, no. What's
cliff
playing?
diving.
What's playing? There's a Clint Eastwood movie that's playing. Oh, let's go.
Yeah, I don't
That's
need to know anything else.
so he was the brand,
Yeah.
right? It's a Clint Eastwood movie. You're going to get some suspense and you're going to get some action, and it's a Clint Eastwood
Yeah,
movie.
no, you don't need to know anything else really. And I even, I have people like that where with mostly filmmakers where, I'll always go see the new Ari Aster film or, Robert Eggers, I'm always going to go check those out.
Well, they have created brands for themselves. I think Ari Aster definitely struggled with Was it Edgerton or
E- Uh,
Eddington?
Eddington.
Eddington. He had some good. I don't know if you saw it. He was on to some good ideas, but he didn't have the script discipline that I felt he needed, the narrative discipline. There's Austin Butler and he's off in his own movie, and there's like it just there's Pedro Pascal and he's almost like in a different movie.
Yeah,
And
it did feel a little disjointed.
I felt like he didn't have a narrative through line, do you know what I mean? He had great ideas, beautiful production, but it didn't make any money. And there's a reason because it wasn't tested. I don't know. It wasn't fine tuned for an audience. Robert Eggers, I have to say, I was surprised by the success of was it? It was Dracula, right?
Nosferatu.
Nosferatu, yeah. Um, for me, I found it a little slow, but I think maybe people were ready to just indulge in those visuals and that pace and all that. He's a little too deliberate in pace for my taste, but I think people like his point of view.
No, I think he's definitely an interesting voice. He seems to know what he wants and he kind of just does that
And he sticks to it, which
and
is to his credit.
yeah. Yeah, people seem to enjoy it. I'm very much a fan. I think he's doing a werewolf film next, and I like that his movies are not contemporary. He's vowed to like never make a movie with a cell phone or a car in it. Uh,
He's not interested. I know there's just been a new Frankenstein. I think Guillermo del Toro has just done Frankenstein. So
yeah,
I don't know what that. But again, I think that's for a streamer.
it is. It's for Netflix, which is upsetting because I don't get to see those films in the theater. They have very limited runs, like
They do some vanity theater, but it's not really a
right,
screening.
not something I can go to here in New Jersey.
And it's also where Martin Scorsese went to hide out. He's like, okay, I've got my Apple money and I can finish my career. Yeah, he's an old man now, but I can finish my career with Apple money. The problem is, it's like it becomes an Apple movie. That's the Irishman. They put it in some theaters, but it's an Apple movie suddenly. You know what I mean? It's just different. And that one he made with Lily Gladstone, that's that's a 3-hour miniseries, it seemed like to me.
Yeah, pretty long, which isn't new for Scorsese. You know, he's definitely not afraid of a longer runtime. But that was a tough one to get through without having to use the bathroom. I will say, I was able to go to that one in theaters. That was the Apple one, and Irishman was Netflix, if I'm not mistaken.
No, no, Irishman was Apple, I'm pretty sure. Well,
I'm for
you'll have to
well,
fact check me.
yeah, it's all the same. It doesn't matter.
No, but he's made, they like him there. I think he's made a home kind of at Apple. But where else is he going to get $100 million? He's not going to get it from Universal, right? And he knows that.
Yeah,
He's going to get that big check from a Northern California tech company.
yeah, they got that iPad money. They can throw that around, no problem.
Even with that Clooney Pitt movie that they made, no one saw it, no one cared, but they had those two faces. And I went into an Apple store, and every single iPad, every display had either Clooney or Pitt's face on it. And
Interesting.
I thought, okay, I see what this was. This was just a big advertisement for Apple products.
Yeah. So we're coming a bit to the end here.
Yeah,
I've
sorry.
greatly, I know it's, I trust me, I could talk to you all day. I think we share a lot of the same values as far as the cinematic experience. So with that being said, I was just wondering, how important is it to you that, your films are available on physical media, even, to the in the modern day, going back to the VHS time where, you're able to introduce new generations through physical media. In the age of streamers where things are so disposable, I think it's very important that these things are
Well, I
available.
love the Blu-ray editions because I feel like people who buy Blu-rays still have the machine at home and they still enjoy the format, even more than DVD. I think DVD is really played out now, but Blu-ray seems to still. There's collectors, and even some of the little movies I've made that didn't have much life. If when they're reissued, like there's a company called Arrow,
Hmm.
and Arrow took one of my really first movies, and they
Bloodstone, right?
Bloodstone, yeah,
Yeah,
they did a Blu-ray, and it's like, wow, this looks so much better. And
they do
they
really great restoration work over
you know,
there.
they restored it, they sweetened the soundtrack, they gave it some extras, and suddenly it's a very playable movie. It's like, and people who would never heard of it could see it. So that's important. The other thing that I do enjoy is when the movies show up on traditional cable. Like it's when I see it come up on TNT even or on Stars or FX or something, or even Sci-Fi Channel. I mean, I enjoy that. I think they're having a screening of Rapid Fire. I'm waiting for the details at the American Cinematheque here. I think maybe part of a Brandon Lee thing, or maybe I'm not sure, but that'll be fun because they say they've tracked down a really mint 35 millimeter print, so
Oh, that'd be great.
that would be really really fun. Anacondas was a slept on, forgotten movie, and now it's just they run it all the time. So that is fun because and the television I've done. I mean, a lot of episodes, and it just vanishes into the wind, with one exception, I would say, and that is Prison Break. For some reason, still runs in rotation on Netflix. It just hit a nerve there. And the other one that they can't take off that's on like wallpaper is Bones. Do you know about the show Bones?
Yeah, I love David Boreanaz. Big
Yeah,
fan.
and Bones is on all the time because there's a lot of them. There's it was 12 seasons, but you can start a Bones and watch it from beginning to end and turn it off. You don't have to know the arc of that season, right? It's like Law and Order. That's their secret. It's a standalone story. You can see one episode of Law and Order and get it. I mean, there's arcs to the characters, but you don't have to know everything there is to know to watch an episode of that.
Yeah, that's what I miss about the 22 episode sort of television model. I'm a big fan of shows like Buffy, The Vampire
Yeah.
Slayer, and Angel that David was also on. Um, I'm also a fan of the show Dollhouse. Really big fan. I think that show was incredible. I know you only did a handful of episodes. So selfishly, I want to ask you just real quick: do you have
Yeah.
any kind of fond memories of Dollhouse? And did you ever meet Joss Whedon or anything like that?
I did meet him in some story meetings. His brother was more involved. There's a Jed is his brother, and he was more involved. I got along really well with Eliza, and I thought she was what's a good word for it? She was game. Do you know what I mean? She
Yeah.
because there was some stuff she was being asked to do.
She does a lot. The whole show is like she's doing a different thing every episode.
He was really, willing to put it out there, and there was some physical stuff that was challenging, and she was willing to do. Um, I had a fear that, how should I say this? When I was getting the scripts, that they were missing it because they were getting too far up their own ass in their world. And I brought it up in a number of story meetings, and it was constantly shot down. But I said, guys, if I'm the episode director and I've read this script maybe 12 times now and broken it down and done notes on it, and because I have to, before I shoot it, I got to really understand it. If I don't understand this, how do you think in one viewing an audience is going to get it? And I just think, well, and they did this on Daybreak too. Well, in season something, episode 4, we established this. I'm like, so who's seen season something? You can't assume that people have just like studied your show. It has to work. I really believe TV has to work as a 1 hour and then let it have an arc, a story arc. So I think they had it with Dollhouse and they lost it. They had it and they got too cerebral.
Yeah,
Like,
the jump from season 1 to 2, I don't know which season you worked on, but season 1 was very much episodic, and then by season 2, it did feel like a large jump in terms of the scale of things. Like they almost like they knew they were going to get canceled, so they were trying to rush to these sort of you know, these world-ending stakes or what have you. So it
I
does
think,
feel a little jarring, but I love the show
yeah,
regardless.
I do think it became too intellectual, um, and they were sort of getting involved in their own ideas. And it's like, okay, I sound like I'm playing the same note again, but what about the audience? Like, what's good for them? Like, what? Because she was great, I thought. I thought she was capable of keeping that show going.
No, for sure. I think there was a lot of potential there, and I was sad to not see it ever get fully realized. But
They
yeah,
didn't get they didn't get any numbers.
it's a shame because I think I discovered it after from knowing Joss from Buffy and things like Firefly and things like that. Again,
But you,
another show that got canceled in its infancy.
yeah, well, it did that. A lot of people didn't like that either. But you can't just shrug off the audience and then be surprised when you get canceled. I mean,
I agree with that for sure. But then you also have sort of the modern day version of that where these streamer shows, if they don't explode on season 1, they just get canceled, and it's like you don't give the show time to really find its footing. Do you agree with that at all? Or
well, I tell you, the practice was on the edge of extermination for the first 2 years. They kept moving it around from Sunday to Monday, and it was dying and dying and dying. And then, now this is the old network model. They put it on after, I think it was, what was the one where you could call for a lifeline? It was a game show. Like,
is it Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
was
Is
that
that
it?
the
Where it's like, I wanted to use my helpline, or it was Regis Philbin. It was a
Yeah,
game.
I think that's Who Wants to Be a
Yeah.
Millionaire.
It was wildly popular. And they put the practice on after that. I think it was on a Sunday. And so people found the show. And then it just blew up and became a very successful show for ABC. So hanging in there. The one that broke my heart is when Millennium was canceled after 3 seasons, because I thought that show was just hitting its stride. And I thought we could have done Frank Black for another 5 seasons. I thought Lance was incredible. The writing staff, it was Chris Carter's show. That one was like, really? And they canceled it with 7 million viewers on a Friday night, which now they got 700,000. You know what I mean? So when you get canceled with 7 million viewers, it's like times has really changed. I mean, they announced some show on FX, and they were just over the moon because it got 2 million viewers. And I'm like, Columbo, Columbo got 22 million viewers.
The standards have definitely taken a dive, it seems.
Yeah. Anyway,
But we're coming to the end of our time here, so I've really enjoyed talking with you, Dwight, or Mr. Little, if you please. I just
it's,
wanted before we wrap, I just wanted you to kind of give maybe your elevator pitch for this book that I think is a must read if you're at all interested in movies. I found it very informative, and I admired how honest you are in this book. You really don't shy away from much of anything. So, if you want to close us out with a
well, thank you for reading it. I think anybody who is thinking about making a short or making a feature or going to film school or has a cousin, or if you're just interested in movies, I think it's really going to be insightful for people. I did try and lay it out and not, I didn't want to be bitter or cruel or mean or anything, but I also wasn't trying to write a puff piece. And I think it's a good look. It's a good look in the curtain. So yeah, tell your friends, push it, tell them. I'd love to have people read it.
for sure. It's available on Amazon. That's where I got it. But if you don't want to support Bezos, you can pretty much wherever
Oh,
books are sold, you can find it.
yeah, it's Barnes and Noble. It's around.
It's out there. You can definitely get it. I would encourage people to. I found it to be a real page turner, and it's not terribly long either. So it's nothing like it's not a Stephen King tome that's going to take you forever to
Right.
get through.
Well, you can get through it.
Yeah, and I honestly I would have read another 200 pages. That's how much I enjoyed it. So, um, Mr. Little, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was a really great discussion. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to maybe tease
No,
or promote or anything, or just the book?
well, yes and no, because I hate to jinx anything. I am busy working to put some stuff together. Well, let's leave it at that.
Awesome, cool. All right, well, we'll be following, and yeah, we'll be eagerly awaiting whatever is next. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me, and everyone watching out there, please have a good day, and remember to watch more movies.
Okay, thanks, Mark.